If you were the strong one in your family, I need you to hear something before we go any further. You were never strong. You were assigned a role, and nobody told you that you could refuse it. You became the one who held everything together, the one who didn't cry, the one people came to when they were falling apart, but who nobody came to when you were. And over the years, that role stopped feeling like a role. It started feeling like your personality, like your identity, like just who you are. But it isn't who you are. It's who you had to become because there was no other option. And what nobody tells the strong one is this role has a price, a quiet, invisible, decades-long price. In this video, I'm going to name 6 of those costs. Costs you've been paying for years without knowing what to call them. And I want you to sit with this question. Who held you when you were holding everyone else? Most strong ones don't have an answer. That's not your fault. That's the whole problem. If this is already touching something in you, that's not a coincidence. This channel exists for minds that carried too much, too young, for too long. You don't need to subscribe yet. Just notice you came here for a reason. What I'm about to name isn't a personality assessment. It's a list of quiet losses. 6 costs that come with being the strong one. Costs that build on each other, that compound over decades, that most people carry without ever having language for them. Each one goes deeper than the last. Each one names something you've felt, but maybe never said out loud. Let's start with the deepest one, the cost you may have never even named. Cost 1. You lost the right to fall apart. You've had moments alone in the car after leaving somewhere, late at night in the bathroom when the house has finally gone quiet, in the shower when the sound of water made it safe. That moment, something almost broke through, something big, something that had been sitting inside you for a long time, and you pushed it back down. Not because you didn't want to feel it, but because some part of you already knew there was no one waiting on the other side of that breakdown. If you cried, nobody would catch it. If you fell apart, nobody would gather the pieces. If you finally let go, you'd still have to be the one to pick yourself up in the morning and go be the strong one for everyone else. So you saved yourself the trouble. You held it. Again, somewhere very early, you learned this. Maybe nobody noticed when you needed to be held. Maybe someone noticed but didn't have the capacity to respond. Maybe the adults around you were so overwhelmed with their own struggles that yours never had a place to land. And a child in that environment does something both intelligent and heartbreaking. They stop needing. They teach themselves, I'll take care of myself. That decision saved you, genuinely. In an environment where nobody was going to hold you, learning to hold yourself was the only option. But it wasn't strength. It was adaptation. A very small person making the best possible choice inside a very difficult situation. And that small person is still inside you, still holding it together, still afraid that if they let go, nobody will be there. Adaptation isn't identity, but it can start feeling like it. Cost 2. Nobody learns how to show up for you. There are people in your life who love you, genuinely, family, friends, a partner, people who would say, without hesitation, that they care about you deeply. But when something goes wrong for you, really wrong, something strange happens. They freeze. They say the wrong thing. They pivot to advice you didn't ask for. They fix instead of listen. Some go quiet entirely because they don't know what to do with a version of you that isn't handling everything. This isn't because they don't love you. It's because they've never seen you need anything. You've spent so many years being the one who holds it together, the one they came to when their own lives were falling apart, that they never had the chance to develop the muscle of showing up for you. You didn't teach them because you couldn't teach them what you were never allowed to model yourself. This is the quiet, unfair math of the strong one's life. You gave everyone around you decades of your steady, dependable presence. You showed up, you listened, you handled, you held. And when you finally, quietly, need someone to do the same for you, most of them don't know how. That isn't their failure, and it isn't yours. It's the residue of a role you never chose but taught everyone else to depend on. Here's what matters. The first time you show up in need, the first time you let someone see the version of you that's tired, struggling, not okay, you're not being difficult, not being selfish, not becoming a burden. You're finally letting the people who love you practice. Some will surprise you, some won't. Both responses are information. But the practice has to start somewhere. People can't return what they were never trained to give. Cost 3. You confused being needed with being loved. Somewhere along the way, without ever consciously deciding to, you started measuring your worth in usefulness. Was I helpful today? Did I fix the problem? Was I necessary? Did I hold the situation together the way I always do? If yes, you felt okay, steady. If no, something inside you got uncomfortable in a way you couldn't quite name. Sit with this for a moment. When you're not being useful, when there's no crisis to manage, no problem to solve, no weight to carry, you feel a strange discomfort, almost like guilt, almost like emptiness, like you don't quite know what your worth is when you're just existing. Being useful gives you a role, and a role tells you where you belong. Being alone with yourself, with no crisis, no responsibility, no one to help, can feel unnervingly quiet, sometimes empty, sometimes even unsafe. That's the wound speaking. Because somewhere in your childhood, appreciation came for what you did, not for what you were. Praise arrived when you were helpful. Love felt closer when you were useful. The people around you saw you most clearly when you were solving something for them. And the child who lives in that equation learns a devastating rule. I am valuable when I am useful. I am invisible when I am not. That equation is still running today. It's the reason you can't rest without guilt. It's the reason relationships feel unsteady when there's nothing to fix. It's the reason love, for you, has always felt more like being counted on than being cherished. But here's the truth you've been circling for years. Being needed feels like love, but it isn't. Love asks nothing of you. Being needed asks everything. Love says, I'm glad you're here. Being needed says, I need you to keep being who you've always been for me. Those are two entirely different experiences. And you deserve the first one. You always did. You are allowed to be loved when you're not fixing anything. The fourth cost is quieter, and in some ways, more devastating. Cost 4. You stopped being able to tell what you feel. Someone asks how you're feeling, and you pause. Not because you're hiding something, not because you're being guarded, because you genuinely don't know. There's something happening inside you. You can feel that there's something. It has weight, it has presence, but naming it feels almost impossible. Like trying to describe a color you've never seen. Like reaching for a word in a language you were never fully taught. You end up saying fine, not because you're lying, but because that's the closest word you can find. This isn't personality. This isn't emotional distance. This is what happens when a person spends decades not being allowed to feel. When you were young, expressing emotion was a burden. It made things harder for the people around you. Your sadness added weight to a house that was already heavy. Your anger destabilized adults who couldn't manage their own. Your needs took energy nobody had to spare. So you did what any child in that situation would do. You stopped expressing. Then, slowly, you stopped noticing. Then, eventually, you stopped feeling clearly. Not because your feelings disappeared. They didn't. They're all still there. But you spent so many years turning down the volume that you can't quite hear them anymore. And the tragedy is that the world often calls this maturity, composure, emotional intelligence. People admire it. They rely on it. They don't realize they're admiring a wound. Here's what I want you to know. Your feelings aren't gone. You've just stopped listening. And that muscle, the muscle of feeling your own inner life, clearly can come back, slowly, gently, through practice, but only when you begin listening again. You don't have language for it because no one taught you the words matter. If you've made it this far, you've probably felt seen at least once. That's rare. The reason you're still here is that something in this is true for you. If you want more of this, the subscribe button is the quietest way to make sure you find your way back to it. The fifth cost isn't emotional, it's physical. Cost 5. Your body kept the score. You've probably had moments sitting in a doctor's office, awake at 4 a.m., staring at the ceiling, halfway through a workday, when a wave of exhaustion hit you that had nothing to do with what you'd actually done, where you knew, without being able to explain it, that your body was tired in a way that didn't match your life. Chronic fatigue that no test explains, tension in your shoulders and jaw that no massage fully releases, sleep that never quite restores you, health issues that arrived earlier than they should have, digestive problems, headaches, aches you can't trace. Doctors run tests. Tests come back normal. They tell you to try to reduce stress, and you nod, because what else are you going to say? Here's what psychology now understands clearly. When emotions aren't allowed to surface consciously when they're pushed down, decade after decade, because there's no safe space to let them out, the body registers them anyway. Every feeling you weren't allowed to feel didn't disappear. It got stored. In your muscles, in your nervous system, in your gut, in the parts of you that don't need language to keep score. This is what researchers call somatic memory. What the mind refuses to feel, the body carries. For someone who has been the strong one for 30, 40, 50 years, the body has been carrying an enormous amount for a very long time. And bodies get tired. Bodies keep track. Bodies eventually start speaking in the only language they have. Symptoms. Your body isn't your enemy. It isn't betraying you. It's a translator, speaking on behalf of every feeling you were never allowed to name, every breakdown you never got to have, every moment you needed to be held and weren't. And when you finally start letting the emotions surface consciously, instead of somatically, a strange thing begins to happen. The body starts to soften, not overnight, but gradually, because it no longer has to carry alone what your mind is finally willing to feel. The body carries what the mind refuses to name. And this is the sixth cost, the deepest one, the one that ties everything else together. Cost 6. You became fluent in everyone's language but your own. You can walk into a room and within seconds know exactly who is upset, who is holding back tears, who is about to blow up, who is silently disappointed, who is performing okay when they aren't. You read people the way most people read the weather, effortlessly, constantly, whether you want to or not. You've been a translator your entire life. You've translated your mother's moods when she couldn't name them, your father's silences when he couldn't speak, your siblings' needs when nobody else was watching, your partner's stress before they realize they're stressed, your children's fears before they surface. You know what people mean before they say it. You know what they need before they ask. You've built a lifetime of skill in reading human beings. But here's the turn. When it comes to translating yourself to yourself, you're a stranger in your own language. You cannot always tell what you're feeling. You cannot always name what you need. You cannot always sense what's going on inside you the way you can sense it in everyone else. That is not an accident. Attachment theory calls this hypervigilance. It's what develops when a child grows up in an environment where reading other people's emotional states is required for survival, where safety depends on knowing what mood the adult is in before they walk in the door. You learn to read others because you had to, because the cost of missing something was too high, and the entire time your attention was pointed outward, scanning, tracking, reading, anticipating your own inner voice grew quieter. Not because it wasn't there, but because nobody was ever listening to it, not the adults around you, and eventually, not even you. So it went silent, not gone, silent. You became fluent in a language nobody ever taught you to speak on your own behalf. This isn't your fault. It isn't your nature. It was a job description that was silently assigned a role you never consciously accepted. But that shaped every part of who you became. Now knowing the cost is only half of it. The other half is understanding why we can't simply stop being the strong one. Why even after decades of paying these costs, going back feels almost impossible. Why the strong one, at 45, at 60, at 65, still can't put the weight down. Why the role keeps running, even when we desperately want it to stop. That's what part 2 will explain. I'm working on it right now. It'll be up on this channel soon. If you want to be there when it drops, subscribe. That way you won't miss it. But before you go, I want to end this one properly. I want to come back to the question I asked at the beginning. Who held you when you were holding everyone else? Take a minute with that. Don't rush the answer. For a lot of you, the answer is nobody. And that's not a failure. That's not a defect in you. That's not evidence that you were unworthy of being held. That's just the truth of what happened. The fact that nobody held you doesn't mean you didn't deserve to be held. It means the people around you didn't have the capacity, the awareness, or the training to see the child underneath the role. They saw the strong one. They needed the strong one. That's what they responded to. But you were never just the strong one. You spent decades being what your family needed, being reliable, being steady, being the person everyone else could fall apart around. And somewhere inside all of that, a version of you never got to be held, never got to fall apart safely, never got to just be a person instead of a function. That version of you is still there, still waiting, still hoping someone will finally notice. Let this video be the first person who did. And one last thing before you go, take care of the one who's been taking care of everyone else.